It's me, Mario!
Super Mario 64 released as a launch title for the Nintendo 64 in 1996, and was an incredible milestone for Super Mario, Nintendo, and gaming as a whole. No longer would games be confined to a 2D plane, or emulate the feeling of 3D with stiff tank controls. And for as revolutionary as it was, who am I kidding? You've heard all of this before. I'm not here to tell you about why Super Mario 64 is such an influential game that helped shape modern 3D gaming as we know it. That's old news. Wouldn't it be more interesting to talk about a character that only appears in the game for a combined 5 minutes and then disappeared from the Super Mario series entirely? Oh, well, I'm doing it anyway. Now, I know what you're thinking. Silvery, who the heck is MIPS? And if you are familiar with MIPS, I also know what you're thinking. Silvery, why the heck did you make a documentary about MIPS? And if you're not thinking either of those two thoughts and are just patiently anticipating where this video is going, make sure to like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. MIPS is the yellow rabbit that appears in the basement of Princess Peach's castle once you've collected 15 power stars in Super Mario 64. When you first encounter MIPS, he'll run away from Mario. Now, this encounter prompts many questions, like, who is this man? Why is he in the basement? What significance does he have to Super Mario 64's narrative? And perhaps most importantly, why does Princess Peach keep a pool of liquid metal, a fake wall, and a portrait depicting the eternal damnation in her basement? If anything, MIPS is the least out of place thing in this basement. At best he's a pet, and at worst he's a stray animal looking for shelter. Either way, I'm much more concerned about the structural damage this basement is sustaining due to being in a perpetually flooded state. The first instinct most players will have when they first see MIPS flee from Mario is to catch him, which is exactly what the game intends you to do. MIPS is, for lack of better terminology, a bit of a slippery fuck, and can be a bit tricky to catch, but with some patience, luck, and perhaps even some skill, MIPS can be caught and he'll trade a power star in exchange for his freedom. After that, MIPS disappears from the world of Super Mario 64 completely. But once you collect 50 power stars, he shows up in the basement again to put you through the same song and dance he did 35 power stars ago. Once you catch him again, he'll relinquish another power star, and then he vanishes from the game for the final time. It's a fun little challenge, and while its difficulty varies, catching MIPS is certainly a memorable part of Super Mario 64 that a lot of players remember. But what most players may not realize is that this was the last appearance of MIPS in the entire Super Mario franchise. Now, surely this should be the end of our conversation about MIPS. He's a random entity that appears in Super Mario 64 with no explanation, is essential to collecting all power stars in 2 separate but identical instances, but has 0 story relevance and seemingly no reason to exist other than getting the power star count to a nice even 120. For a lot of players, that's the end of MIPS. But what if I was to tell you that MIPS has a much more significant role in Super Mario 64, one that helps expand the game's otherwise bare-bones story and lore, one that spawned an incredibly passionate community of fans competing to push this game far past its own limits, and one that was rooted firmly in the origins of Super Mario 64 itself. You might think I'm exaggerating, but that's only because you don't know the truth behind MIPS, Super Mario 64's unsung star.
Let's go!
In the beginning, there was nothing. Shigeru Miyamoto said, "Let there be MIPS." Before the 15 courses and 120 power stars to collect, there stood only 2 men in the early testing days of Super Mario 64. One, the titular Mario, the hero whom this entire game revolved around. There is no Super Mario 64 without Mario, and nailing the feel and control of how Mario plays in a 3D space was the top priority when it came to designing this game. Characters and worlds would evolve as the game reached further and further into development, eventually culminating in the influential masterpiece we're all familiar with. However, at the start, it was just Mario and MIPS? According to a Nintendo Power interview from October 1996, MIPS was the first character developed for Super Mario 64 besides the main man himself. He was used for testing, following Mario to locations and helping map out viewpoints and perspectives. As development continued, Miyamoto needed a character for the basement of Peach's castle, and the team was so fond of MIPS that they had to include him in the game proper. Not only had MIPS fulfilled his purpose, but he won over the hearts of the development team to earn a rightful place in the game, going from a dummy test character to a named and integral part of Super Mario 64. Speaking of, let's talk about that name. MIPS is a pretty cute name for a rabbit, but it's spelt a little differently than you might think. It's not MIPS, it's MIPS. Very important distinction. The name MIPS comes from the MIPS microprocessor, which is the reduced instruction set computer used in the Nintendo 64. To my understanding, this helps the Nintendo 64 run games better by only accessing a single memory entry for each instruction instead of stringing more complex commands that use more memory. I could also just be completely wrong about this. The Wikipedia article for the RISC has a warning that it might be too advanced for some readers, and I'm inclined to believe them. Basically, the MIPS microprocessor helps the Nintendo 64 run games well, and to pay homage to this integral piece of hardware, MIPS the Rabbit was named. It's actually really fitting, since just as the Nintendo 64 wouldn't run without the MIPS, Super Mario 64 might not have played as well had MIPS not helped lay the groundwork in its earliest stage. But speaking of its earliest stage, there's actually some beta content in Super Mario 64 that relates directly to MIPS. Development data for Super Mario 64 contains an early pink version of MIPS. It lacks textures for the eyes and has the ability to rotate its head 180 degrees, which I'm going to assume was just for testing. But who knows, maybe MIPS was originally meant to be some kind of incomprehensible horror. Originally, the team planned for Super Mario 64 to include a race against a rabbit, but thought losing to a quick rabbit might be too harsh and stressful, and that it would just be more fun to race a Koopa Troopa. This led to the creation of fan favorite Koopa the Quick, while MIPS' role shifted to the basement. There were also plans for Mario to be able to throw MIPS, and Miyamoto stated this would have made it into the game if there was an additional month of work. Personally, I don't think it would have taken that long, because not only is there an animation of MIPS being thrown left over in the game, but the code that makes Mario able to throw MIPS is also in the game and can be easily patched in. And you can actually throw MIPS without hacking under very specific circumstances, but we'll talk about that a little later.
Let's go!
As previously stated, MIPS first appears in the basement of Princess Peach's castle after you collect 15 Power Stars. Catching him rewards Mario and the player with another Power Star, and he pulls the same routine after you collect 50 Power Stars. At first, it seems like MIPS is simply a way to add an extra 2 Power Stars to reach that nice 120 total without the need to develop a completely new level, but still providing a more interactive challenge than simply talking to Toad. But then, why add MIPS specifically? I get that he was included because the developers liked him, but he still needs a specific purpose within the game. Whether it's to flesh out the environment or help Mario collect a Power Star, no character, enemy, or signpost was put into Super Mario 64 without a purpose. Even the Mad Piano, a one-off enemy that can be completely ignored, adds to the unsettling atmosphere built up in Big Boo's haunt. The simple fact is that, within this context, MIPS does have a purpose. He hands out power stars over the course of the game if you catch him. In that regard, he's no different than the Ukiki atop Tall Tall Mountain, or the Maw-Ray in Jolly Roger Bay. But thematically, those characters make a lot of sense for their respective worlds. A monkey atop a mountain and an eel swimming in the ocean. What significance does a rabbit in the basement hold? Most players wouldn't think or care this much about MIPS, but I am not most players. I am the player that Super Mario 64 has been waiting for all this time. The one who will finally unearth the reason for MIPS's existence. Feel free to call me the MIPS Buster. No one's gonna call me that. Let's look specifically at what we know about MIPS through the game itself. Specifically, his dialogue. Yeah, MIPS has dialogue. Let's start with his first line. Yow! Unhand me, brute. Yup, we're really taking this line by line. Just trust me on this, I swear I'm going somewhere. So, from this first line, it's unclear if MIPS knows who Mario is or not. But one thing we can tell for sure is that this interaction immediately colors his opinion of Mario, calling him a brute. Which I might let slide since MIPS wasn't doing anything besides hopping around, but why is he hopping around Princess Peach's castle while she's trapped within the castle's very walls? Something seems fishy here, and it's not the faint ocean breeze wafting from the nearby Dire Dire docks. Next, let's talk about MIPS's Power Star. MIPS refers to the Power Star as this shiny thing, as if he has no idea what it is or what purpose it serves. All he knows is that it's shiny and it was given to him, so of course he's going to rebut when he thinks the brutish Mario wants to steal it. And if it wasn't already clear that MIPS is a bit playful and mischievous with how he makes Mario chase him, he openly taunts Mario for a moment before realizing that he is late for an important date. The last big bombshell MIPS drops is that he received the star from none other than King Bowser Koopa himself, and as a gift no less. MIPS, what are you doing accepting presents from Bowser? Bowser, what are you doing giving power stars to random vermin? The only other power stars you can find in Princess Peach's castle itself are ones given out by Toads, who specifically mention that they found the power stars and have been holding onto them for Mario. MIPS is the only character in the game that isn't an enemy or a boss that we see actively colluding with Bowser. But the fact that he's stationed in Princess Peach's castle and not one of the worlds within the castle makes it hard for me to believe that MIPS is one of Bowser's minions. It's worth noting that King Babam also describes his power star as a gift, but the fact that MIPS willingly hands over the star instead of putting up a fight like all of Bowser's other minions, something's not adding up here. MIPS's second set of dialogue is more or less the same. He's once again annoyed to be caught by Mario, this time coming across as more frustrated. He's still in a hurry for something, and tells Mario that he never meant to hide the Power Star, reaffirming that he has no nefarious intent. And that's pretty much it. It's not much, but from this brief bit of dialogue, we have a pretty clear and concise look at MIPS's character. MIPS is a mischievous little bugger who was given 2 power stars as a gift from Bowser. However, he doesn't seem to be one of Bowser's minions, not understanding the significance of the power stars, and being completely unwilling to put up a fight against Mario after he's caught. We have no idea what this important date he's late for is, and while we could theorize the possible relationships MIPS has forged over his likely short life, I think we should just chop that one up as a harmless Alice in Wonderland reference with no real depth or meaning behind it. I'm content with this analysis, and think I've squeezed every ounce of characterization out of this random mob as I possibly can. Except, there are still 2 unanswered questions that loom in the back of my mind. Why is MIPS in Peach's castle in the first place? And is this dialogue really accurate to the original version of MIPS?
Let's go!
It's no secret that when media gets localized from one country to another, some nuances of language may not be easily translated, and in some cases text needs to be changed altogether for it to make sense. This isn't inherently a bad thing. Even the most accurate Japanese to English translations still involve some interpretation on the part of the translator, and it's the same case for English to Japanese translations as well. There doesn't seem to be any egregious localization in MIPS's dialogue, or any text in Super Mario 64 for that matter, but on the off chance that anything is even slightly different between versions, I want to document it. So I did the only sensible thing and hired a Japanese to English translator on Fiverr to translate the dialogue of MIPS the Rabbit from Super Mario 64, you know, as any sane person would. And I know what you're thinking. How can I trust the words of one translator on Fiverr? That's why I actually hired 3. So, what does MIPS say in the original Japanese version of Super Mario 64? It's really just a more simple, straight-to-the-point version of what he says in English, calling Mario a violent brute, saying he got the star from Bowser, affirming he has no ill intent, and handing over the star for his freedom. The only major difference between versions is that Japanese MIPS doesn't mention any hot dates. Bowser MIPS shippers in shambles. Now, you might think this was a waste of time and money, but such is the life of the documentarian. I have a civic duty to not leave any stone unturned, and I genuinely believe this video is greater because of my willingness to question that which has yet to be asked. I wonder if anyone's still watching. As for what MIPS is even doing in Peach's Castle, well, we've exhausted every bit of MIPS lore within the game itself, so it's time to look at supplementary Super Mario 64 information. Starting with the Super Mario 64 official player's guide released by Nintendo Power, there's a whole little section about MIPS on page 83. The full PDF of this guide is available on the Internet Archive, so I didn't have to go out of my way to buy this guide myself. I bought it anyway. In my defense, this is a really neat guide, with full diagrams of every level and cute little puns and jokes. They really don't make supplementary gaming material like they used to. Getting back to MIPS, this guide doesn't elaborate on MIPS's appearance in Peach's Castle. Well, that was a waste of money. The strategy guide does reaffirm MIPS's love for shiny objects and that Bowser offered him the Power Stars. It also refers to MIPS as a wascally wabbit, which is very cute, and most interestingly states that there are rumors that it's possible to sneak up on MIPS. Oh, that's just false information. MIPS immediately hops away once Mario gets close to him, regardless of how sneaky Mario is. Thanks for nothing, Nintendo Power. You know, I'm glad they don't make supplementary gaming material like they used to. So, with no explanation for MIPS's appearance in the actual Nintendo 64 game, or the official strategy guide, it seems like this is one mystery that's unsolvable. It's a shame. I didn't want to leave this section with any glaring loose ends, but I can't just materialize more Super Mario 64 information out of nowhere. But maybe Nintendo can. Behold, the Super Mario Bros. Encyclopedia, released in the US in 2018. It's been chilling on my shelf these past years, right by my official Quest 64 strategy guide, my all-in-one Mega Death Note, and famous restaurateur Joe Bastianich's autobiography. When I began working on this video, I never considered that this encyclopedia, released over 20 years after Super Mario 64, would hold the answer to its greatest mystery. Why is MIPS in Princess Peach's castle? According to the official Super Mario Bros. Encyclopedia, he's Princess Peach's pet rabbit. That may seem like an obvious assumption anyone could have made just by looking at MIPS, but receiving official confirmation to such a hyper-niche topic is truly satisfying. You might still be wondering why MIPS is in the basement. F you, he lives here. He can hop wherever he damn well pleases. What are you doing in the basement, freak? At this point, there should be no more questions and uncertainty regarding MIPS in Super Mario 64. Right?
Let's go!
Super Mario 64 was one of the first 3D platformers released, and by far the most revolutionary of its time. As a pioneer for this entire genre, it's truly impressive that the game is as well designed and holds up as well as it does today. It's not without its cracks though. To get any game in a blossoming new genre absolutely perfect on the first try would be nothing short of witchcraft, and I have yet to find enough evidence to convict Miyamoto as a literal warlock.
Yahoo!
In regards to glitches, most of them have to be specifically sought out and don't really interfere with a normal playthrough. The most well-known of these glitches is the backwards long jump, or BLJ for short, a technique where you repeatedly long jump while holding backwards on the control stick, allowing Mario to gain an absurd amount of speed and bypass the restraints of doors, walls, and even reality itself. The most iconic and practical application for this move is to bypass the 50-star door in Peach's castle. In a normal playthrough of Super Mario 64, you need to collect at least 70 stars and defeat Bowser in the Dark World and Fire Sea in order to reach the final level, Bowser in the Sky. You need 50 power stars to even access the star door that leads to Bowser in the Sky, and if you try to enter Bowser in the Sky before you collect 70 power stars, you'll be stuck trying to climb the endless staircase until the end of time. So close to the end, yet unable to make any forward progress. Or at least until you turn around and collect the extra power stars you need. By using BLJs on the staircase leading to the 50-star door, you can easily build up enough speed to blast past the star check. Then, it's only a matter of launching yourself faster than the endless staircase can manifest, and you're able to reach the final level of the game as early as you reach the second floor of Peach's castle. So then, how early can you reach the second floor of Peach's castle? Normally, you'd need to beat Bowser in the Fire Sea, which is unlocked after you enter the 30-star door in the basement and clear the Bored Bowser sub-power star in Dire Docks. Using that logic, it should be possible to beat Super Mario 64 by only collecting 31 stars, and initially, this was the case. Then, in 2004, a new discovery would forever change the Super Mario 64 speedrunning landscape, and it's all thanks to MIPS. According to speedrun.com, the premier website for tracking and submitting speedrun attempts, at the time of writing this video, Super Mario 64 has over 300 active runners and almost 40,000 submitted runs, making it one of, if not, the most speedrun game on the platform. Is the past tense speedrun or speedran? Like most games cataloged on the website, Super Mario 64 speedruns are categorized based on how much of the game is completed. In the case of Super Mario 64, this correlates to the amount of power stars collected before beating the final level. 120-star speedruns demand runners to master every individual objective in the game, while still maintaining the most optimal path to reach the final showdown with Bowser. 70-star speedruns don't allow BLJs or any other techniques that skip star doors or levels, forcing players to adapt more to how the developers intended Super Mario 64 to be played. Both of these categories have a ton of submitted runs, even more than some games receive across all of their respective categories. And yet, they both pale in comparison to the most popular Super Mario 64 speedrun category, the 16-star speedrun. If you want a more in-depth history of Super Mario 64's 16-star speedrun, I highly recommend checking out Summoning Salt's video on the subject. It's a great watch, and it really helped me put this video together. On May 10th, 2004, GameFAQs user Dom Dunk created a new topic on the forum titled, "Beat the Game with 16 Stars." In their post, they claim that Super Mario 64 could be beaten with only 16 power stars collected, stating MIPS was involved and providing a picture of Mario in the Bowser in the Sky level with only 18 power stars. This picture has since been lost to time, but I imagine it looks something like this. Dom Dunk challenged users to figure out how MIPS was involved, with some users claiming to have figured it out and others calling this post out as a hoax. On May 15th, 2004, the 1-year anniversary of the GameFAQs Secrets of Super Mario 64 topic, Dom Dunk fully explained the technique known today as the MIPS clip, which, while not as well known and recognizable as the backwards long jump, is arguably the most important discovery in the history of Super Mario 64 speedrunning, leading to the birth of the most active speedrun category of one of the most active speedrun games. As Dom Dunk hinted at in their initial post, the MIPS clip is a pretty simple technique, and it would be heavily revised and optimized following its discovery. After Mario catches MIPS and MIPS relinquishes his power star, Mario can pick up MIPS and carry him around the basement. This is where the ability to throw MIPS would have been implemented, but in the game proper, the only thing Mario can do after grabbing MIPS is gently put him down. This single action, the ability to pick MIPS up and put him back down, is what breaks Super Mario 64 wide open. Cards on the table, I am not a speedrunner and do not have the ability to explain the nuance of the MIPS clip, and there are plenty of guides and tutorials to check out if you're interested in how to perform this technique yourself. Personally, I use this tutorial by Drogi to record footage, but there are more advanced tutorials that are absolutely insane. By holding MIPS and walking towards the door leading to the room with the star door at just the right spot, Mario can crouch and phase through the door. Then by crawling, you can turn around, re-grab MIPS, and jump through the door, taking MIPS to a room he was never meant to enter. After that, simply perform the trick again on the star door, and you've made it past the 30-star door with only 15 power stars collected. And just like that, you can now beat Super Mario 64 with only 16 power stars. This was, for a while, thought to be the fastest way to beat Super Mario 64, and thus, the 16-star speedrun category was born, with several players using the MIPS clip to beat Super Mario 64 in record time. Since then, players have found ways to beat Super Mario 64 without collecting a single power star. And while it's objectively the fastest way to beat Super Mario 64 and has a good amount of dedicated runners, it couldn't replace the intensely competitive 16-star speedrun scene, which had been prominent and evolving since 2004 and still remains just as exciting and fiercely competitive almost 20 years later. And to think, none of this would even be possible without MIPS. But we're not quite done with the MIPS clip yet, because this trick can be used to encounter some shenanigans. In the room leading to the star door, if you drop MIPS near the railing, this happens. Wow, just look at him go. It's also possible to accidentally drop MIPS behind the star door when performing the second MIPS clip, which is one of the funniest and most heartbreaking ways to lose a personal best time. If you bring MIPS into the moat draining area, you could drown him. You can still hold MIPS while swimming, and this is how you can throw MIPS in Super Mario 64 without hacks. I don't know why you can throw MIPS in the water and not while on land, but look at how slow he falls. If you try to clip through the entrance of the basement, you end up trapped in limbo, unable to escape from an endless loop of trying to enter and exit the basement. It's actually really creepy, especially since the hallway doesn't properly load in this state. Who knows what's lurking out there? Take him into the Hazy Maze cave room and just drop him in. So long, gay MIPS. I hope you enjoyed toxic gas and parallel dimensions, you little scamp. Alternatively, take him with you to hell. The applications of the MIPS clip are very limited, but the entertainment is near limitless.
Let's go!
I'm sure you can probably tell by now, but MIPS is a very fascinating piece of Super Mario history to me. from his conception to his role in the game to his unsung legacy as Super Mario 64's X Factor. There's a surprising amount to talk about regarding this little dude with such limited presence. But the thing that fascinates me more than anything I've discussed so far about MIPS is the fact that Super Mario 64 is his only appearance in the entire Super Mario series. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to seriously think about it for a moment. How many things, be it characters, enemies, bosses, levels, anything, how many things can you think of that only appear in Super Mario 64? And before you think too hard trying to one-up me, anything that also appears in Super Mario 64 DS does not count. I'm talking strictly about stuff exclusive to the original game. Off the top of my head, I can only think of two things exclusive to Super Mario 64. One is MIPS, and the other is the Vanish Cap, unless you count the Invisible Cap from Super Mario Odyssey, in which case, it's just MIPS. Now, MIPS not appearing in later Super Mario adventures isn't the most shocking revelation, but why doesn't he appear in Super Mario 64 DS? Super Mario 64 DS isn't a one-to-one recreation of Super Mario 64. It includes new levels, new playable characters, new power stars, and most importantly for this video, new minigames. Each playable character has their own set of minigames, and in order to unlock them throughout the game, you have to catch these rabbits throughout Peach's castle, each one with the same patterns and behaviors as MIPS. There's also a lone yellow rabbit that appears at the start of the game. Catching this rabbit gives Yoshi the key necessary to open Peach's castle, and while its dialogue does hint at a more mischievous personality like MIPS, there's nothing in the game itself that indicates that this rabbit is MIPS. Even if MIPS isn't present in Super Mario 64 DS, it's clear he hasn't been completely forgotten. Some rabbits in this game appear in the basement of Peach's castle, in the same spot MIPS originally occupied. Also, in the internal data for Super Mario 64 DS, the rabbits are internally named MIP, and the minigame keys are named MIP key. After you collect 40 power stars in Super Mario 64 DS, glowing rabbits will start to appear in place of the regular rabbits. And after you collect 80 power stars, they start to appear much more frequently. Catching 8 of these rabbits will give you a key that can be used to open the blank white door in the character select room, granting another power star. It's a neat little homage to MIPS, even though this was a seriously disappointing reveal of what was behind this last door. One last but really cool nod that I'm pretty sure is unintentional is that the rabbits in this game are different colors for each of the playable characters. Yoshi's rabbits are yellow, just like MIPS. Luigi's are green, Wario's are orange, and Mario's are pink. And this shade of pink is the same as the beta MIPS. I doubt it was thought about that deeply, but I still think it's really neat. Chasing rabbits would actually remain a recurring motif in the 3D Mario games, be it Star Bunnies in Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, Mega Rabbits in Super Mario 3D World, or these dapper hat-wearing rabbits from Super Mario Odyssey. You could argue this motif made its way into the 2D Mario games as well with Nabbit in New Super Mario Bros. U. Mark my words, he's gonna get his own video someday. MIPS may have been absent from the Super Mario series for almost 30 years, but his legacy within the series can still be felt to this day. He even makes a cameo appearance in the Super Mario Minecraft mashup, although this is just as a skin for rabbits as a nod to the character, and not actually MIPS himself. In a game like Super Mario 64, with huge, sprawling environments, creative and exciting power-ups, and larger-than-life boss battles, it's really fascinating that the little rabbit that hops around the basement has not only been so fondly remembered by the development teams of later Super Mario games, but by the fans as well. We all remember MIPS and how rewarding it felt to finally catch the slippery only to have to do it again later. If you're a 16-star speedrunner, I'm sure you remember how tricky the MIPS clip was to pull off at first, and how satisfying it was to nail it consistently for a higher personal best. And on the off chance you haven't played Super Mario 64, why the hell did you watch this video all the way through? It's a game I think everyone needs to play at least once. So check it out on the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass, pay for a scalped copy of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, or just emulate the game, and let me know what you think of the unsung star of Super Mario 64, M.I.P.S. the Rabbit. Did you learn anything new from this video? Originally, I pitched this as a joke to my friends, but as I fell further and further down the rabbit hole, M.I.P.S. turned from this one-off Super Mario oddity to a genuinely important piece of Super Mario 64's history that enthralled me the more I learned about him. I'm not sure if we'll ever see M.I.P.S. in a Super Mario game again, but even if we don't, he's done plenty for the Super Mario series, and especially Super Mario 64. So long, gay viewer. Thank you so much for watching my video.